Hey guys, another weekend AMA. I'm gonna try to be a little bit quiet because I'm in a hotel room right now, and April's kind of napping over there. Um, but how's everyone doing? I meant to do the AMA last night, but I got distracted just getting prepared for the trip that I'm on, and so just taking care of some things. Uh, but I want to make sure I do my weekend AMA. Texture Tree, welcome. Drew Staples, what's going on? So, uh, how's everyone doing, man? I'm a little jet lagged. I'm out of state right now. Looking at some houses, some investment properties. So, uh, uh, but everything's going good. So, good stuff. Got a nice room. So, where I'm at, it's a secret. Uh, secret. So normally I try to talk about. Let me grab my cup so I can gain some water. So normally I like to start with a introduction statement or something like that. I got nothing. Uh, I'm out of town. I've been pretty busy. Um, a lot of stuff going on in the background. No, I'm not depressed. I'm just trying to be quiet because April's sleeping. So so I'm good, man. I honestly haven't been better for a very long time. Like I'm feeling pretty good. Um, it's been about a month since I've given up caffeine, and so like you can see, even my black eyes are finally starting to go away. Um, yeah. So I'm just killing a little bit of time. I'm thinking about going into the jacuzzi. I'm waiting for April to get up. She probably wants to go, but she doesn't get up in the next hour, so I think I'm going solo because they close in 2 hours. Um, but no, I'm good, man. So looking at investment properties this weekend, and so yeah, you just gotta decide that you don't want to do it, man. And I've gotten off it before, and it's a hard thing, man. And I've given up caffeine for 6 months at a time, 7 months, and then something happens. I start drinking, and then next year I'm drinking caffeine, and so um, it's a constant sort of grind, right? Drink tea, yeah. I've got rid of it cold turkey. I did have one monster in the last month. What would you tell yourself back when you first started coding? So I tell myself to try and find a long-term side project that I'd want to work on. That may not be something that you're going to be able to do right when you get going, but have an idea of where you want to end up. And I would also say create a game plan of what it is you're trying to accomplish and how you're going to get there. I think having a plan for things is really one of the keys to being successful. I'm a newbie web development. Do developers use vendor prefixes for all the properties? There aren't vendor prefixes for all the properties. So let's explain what a vendor prefix is used for. So you don't really see them too often anymore, but a while back when a lot of CSS was experimental, uh, the browsers would use vendor prefixes to essentially say that it is experimental and this is how they're implementing it in their browser. Um, so it's sort of how you get that alpha beta feature in CSS properly, and you get it to be browser compliant, and that's going to change that, sort of that's the point of vendor prefixes is how. I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. Let's just say border radius. Border radius, I'm sure at some time had a vendor prefix or some other aspect. Um, that was sort of the idea is Mozilla's going to implement it this way. Um, Edge's going to implement it this way. Chrome's going to implement it that way. And those vendor prefixes were essentially saying, all right, this is how we're implementing it. It's experimental. So that's how it goes. Who chooses different device sizes for a company, as well as keyword and SEO? I usually, for me, I would probably just go based off of what Google tells me is device sizes, but more so you should also base it off of what your user base is. Seem more serious about my videos? Yeah, I mean, I it's an interesting thing. So, the channel's been around almost 4 years now. I think it's like 3 years, 9 months at this point, and so really, in 4 years' time, you've seen someone who, I think I was still in school when I first started the channel, someone who's dropped out of college and sort of worked themselves up to now looking to buy a second house and has several developer jobs. And so there's definitely going to be some change in demeanor. There's going to be some change in topics and, you know, enthusiasm. And like, and the reason for it is because I'm changing, right? So I'm changing, and the thing I've always had my channel be about what I want to talk about, what I want to learn, and how I want to grow. And so naturally, you're going to see those things that are more important to me. And you know, I'm getting older, man. 25-year-old Dylan is a little bit different than 31-year-old Dylan. 31-year-old Dylan's got 12-pack abs. No. You get really nervous and never apply any advice, just apply. Apply and be interviewed. Honestly, anxiety is the worst thing in the world. And so, oftentimes, your worst case scenario is never as bad as it actually is. So, just get over it and do it. Start getting those interviews and seeing how bad it goes. Are you worried about Article 13? I don't even know what it is. So for those of you who don't know, I don't really watch news anymore. The only news I get is what shows up in LinkedIn newsfeed, like in the side panel on LinkedIn. That's the only news I read. So it hasn't popped up for me. Books I recommend to think like a programmer. I'd recommend 2 books for every developer to read at any stage of their career. And both those books are in the description below. You can use my affiliate link to help me out. But it is Clean Code and The Clean Coder. I'd recommend that. When building an Angular service, is there a general limit on how many services you should apply in your app? Like no more than 10. I wouldn't say there's a number limit. I would say there is a purpose limit. And so what you should start thinking about is that if your app is growing large in scope, not just services, do you actually have, if you want to think about it as a component type structure, are there large components that house all this? And should you be breaking those out into other applications? So those are conversations you should start thinking about when architecting your app out. Any tips or resources for learning C#? Just start building stuff. That's always the best thing, is just build something. Dumb question here. Is the CSS in the real world, is inline CSS used at all, or external style sheets? So external style sheets are going to be 99.99%. The only time you have inline styles ever being used is perhaps you're using a third-party application or a framework or something like that, and you need to overwrite their styles. That's sort of the only time you want to use inline styles. But besides that, everything is going to be pretty much external, other than like your components, right? So if you're doing Vue, you'll probably just have a style tag right there that's going to do some localized component stuff. But yeah. Talk to us about your career in brief. You're going to have to be more specific than that, man. What do you want? What do you want to know? What makes a developer great? A couple things. A couple of reasons that my salary is twice what it was when I started. One, you have learned how to be efficient. Efficient meaning that you actually write more you can deliver a better quality product in a shorter amount of time. Um, if they were to put me up against someone straight out of school who probably wasn't working on side projects, or someone who was a junior developer on the same task, I could probably do it in about half the time. That's so there's that aspect, and there's also the aspect of you value things that you should. You're asking the right questions. You're communicating. You're raising issues up. You're supporting agile fundamentals. You are learning how to write clean code and testable code, and you're sort of protecting the code. And there's a lot of professionalism that goes about being a good developer with experience. Does solving algorithms help you gain a better understanding of the language? I would say yes, because a lot of times you use these things like map, reduce, filter, and all the various other helper methods that are with strings, numbers, or booleans, but you, unless you practice using them, you don't really gain. It's like you sort of remember their thing, but you don't really have that understanding of how they're used, right? So I think that's where that doing those algorithms gets you to think of how you're going to problem solve, and actually gives you a use case of doing it. I kind of think of it like this. Say you've never played baseball before, and I want to take you to the batting cages. It's very easy for you to understand that this is a ball and this is a bat, and when the ball comes, you hit it with the bat. But you sort of have to build that fluid memory, that muscle memory. In this case, it's sort of brain memory or programming memory of how to actually do it. And you do that by practice. And I think those algorithms are great practice. Is an accent in a problem in web development? I don't think so. My skin looks amazing. Whew. I've just been getting more sleep, man. I've just been getting more. I still got these wrinkles up here. Getting old. That's better quality sleep, no caffeine. Stress levels are doing much better. Does knowing SQL and databases help getting a junior web dev job? Yeah. I mean, you should be somewhat stuck. You should be somewhat familiar with every aspect of full stack development, even if you want to do front end. Dylan, should I skip to the JavaScript part in Free Code Camp? I'm currently stuck on the documentation page. I mean, you can jump back and forth, but you should be able to do the documentation stuff. Also, how do you personally make sites responsive? So I love CSS Grid. CSS Grid is my go-to. What's an entry-level front-end developer now? At the end of the day, an entry-level front-end developer is going to need to know HTML, CSS, JavaScript. They're going to need a JavaScript framework. They're going to need to know Git. Now, some nice-to-haves are understand Agile, understand testing, understand, and that's sort of very basic. What I'd also recommend you understand is responsive design, and a mobile-first approach, as well as CSS preprocessor. So if you have all that, I think you've covered all your bases to get a solid junior level job. Do you think your brain is going to want to stop coding, instead focus on healthier things such as fitness and not drinking caffeine and frenetic frenzy of stress some of the time? Yeah, so I've talked about this in the past, where I'm looking to have a healthier lifestyle, and so that has helped. That by its very nature has taken time away from side projects. So I'm exercising more. I'm spending time, like I got dogs, so I'm spending time with my dog. I walk him 2-3 times a day. Spending more time with April, and setting up our finances. So absolutely, am I going to spend less time coding? That's a fair thing to say. There are things I will spend time on coding, and things that I think will be valuable and have monetary gain, and that's the sort of stuff I do. So I never code just to code anymore, if that makes sense. I always have an objective. I always have something I'm trying to accomplish and an end goal. So I always feel like I'm checking off 3 boxes by doing one thing. So like a good example of that is my asynchronous JavaScript course. I wanted to do a video on Skillshare and add an additional affiliate link that I can use in the future. So I built that Skillshare course. So it gave me a video for YouTube. I now have an affiliate link I can use on Skillshare, and I have another course and another platform I can put on my resume to talk about how I've released an asynchronous JavaScript course. And so, I'm working on the book because I've never published a book before, which will accomplish similar goals. But, I would say that I'm a little bit more strategic about that. In your professional life, do businesses ever use vanilla JavaScript as a mandatory, like no frameworks allowed? I would say I've never heard of a company actually doing that nowadays. No. There will be times where you need vanilla JS. Maybe you need to, and a lot of times just when integrating third-party apps into your JavaScript application. But you might need to grab some element and modify it directly. How much backend should I know for an entry-level position? I always encourage you to build 1 or 2 projects just to get comfortable with it. The cats are good. The dog is good. April is doing a lot of UI UX stuff right now. What is the difference between using Bootstrap? So Bootstrap is a framework, a library, a CSS library, and so with it comes a bunch of classes, with it comes a bunch of CSS, and then they have their JavaScript portion, which is components. Now, within those CSS classes, they have a grid system. They have a predefined CSS classes that uses a media queries. Now, media queries are going to be how your page knows how to act and use a specific selector for your responsive design. So, in that aspect, Bootstrap builds a bunch of predetermined things based off what Bootstrap thinks are right media sizes. Now, CSS Grid is a native solution to that, and then there's also Flexbox. The reason I tell people not to use Bootstrap anymore is mainly because there's so many people that are bad at CSS that you just need to get better. And 2, Bootstrap is used for a lot of things, but a large majority of people use Bootstrap for that grid system, and it's time to move on. They've built those things natively. So once these things get built natively, it's up to you to continue to learn them and use them and not have to be reliant upon these third-party things. I have a hard time coming up with a project. Any recommendations for good portfolio projects or beginner projects help me build tutorials in the building? So I recommend 2 things. One's a more advanced project, which is get comfortable with a progressive web app, integrating service workers and caching and web manifests and push notifications, all that sort of stuff. And then a CRUD application. And use some sort of open source API like JSON type code or whatever it's called. That's what I recommend. Do you think YouTube stars will eventually get an Oscar? You might deserve one. An Oscar? I think Oscars are for acting. Unless I've been, maybe, how crazy would it be if I actually am not a software engineer? Think about that. Think about that. I have 900 videos out. I do a AMA every hour, and I'm just bullshitting you all. I'm just bullshitting you all. I would deserve an Oscar, I think. That's a almost 4-year dedicated effort. Yeah, we have a house sitter watching the cats. Ever struggle on a problem and then realize it's simple and you felt like an idiot? Yeah, like daily. That's part of being a developer. Oftentimes you figure it out when you go to ask somebody for help, and it's like, oh, well, never mind, I figured it out. Do back-end jobs only exist? Yeah. Can you ask about my course ETA? I'm lagging. I'm lagging right now. Where's she learning UI UX from? Currently, it's she's doing Udemy courses, and then it's going to be either a boot camp or an online boot camp. Any good backend projects for getting a job? Find a good open set of data that you would be interested in retrieving, and just build an API for it. Getting into backend development. I mean, if you wanted to get into backend development, period, C# and .NET seems to be paying very well and growing rather rapidly. But I always think JavaScript is a great general purpose language. In reference to your post about what Kotek Caffeine, what conclusion I come to when I asked what their favorite tutorial site was. I was just curious to see what people are working on, man. See if there's any out there that I wasn't familiar with. I'm finishing my internship after 1 month. I don't think the job is guaranteed. Can you talk about your start? Um, I mean, those are sort of two different things, but I think what you're saying is I think you should have a conversation with your boss about getting hired on full time if that's what your goal is. If not for software, what would you do? Probably what I'm going to do in about 2 years, which is finance. So, moving forward, I will, after I get a second investment property, I will start putting my mental energy. I'll still be working as full time as software engineer, but I'll be putting my mental energy into learning finance. That'd be what I would do. Things like proper investments, maybe day trading, just anything that's everything. Might see some finance videos down the road. What is the time ratio between learning new things and real doing things? Um, did I hear you right in your older live AMAs? Your income is 150 grand. Is this salary? How do I get a slice of that pie? Um, my base is 110. I have a bonus and I have profit sharing in the future. Um, but then I'll also have various passive income streams. So that could be Airbnb, that could be YouTube, that could be courses. So it gets about to 150. Um, I would say probably it'll be a little higher next year. Um, so there you go. That's my money. Do you think being a database analyst is interesting to you? Yeah, I've thought about making a transition in data science in a couple years if I ever get sick of web development. How's my new course coming along? So I released the JavaScript, asynchronous JavaScript course, which there should be a link in the description for it, I think. I just added it. Pretty sure I added it. But the other course, I've been actually writing my book again. So I've been really enjoying writing my book. So I'm jumping between projects. So I do the same thing I give you guys advice. If you start getting burned out on one project, change how you're learning, change how you're working, stay productive. And so like I was getting a little burnt out burning the course, so what I do, I start writing my book again. Yeah, you can definitely just jump into backend if that's what you're interested in. I just finished your 100 algorithms course, which get in the description below for $10 if you're interested. What is some good next step for the technical interview prep? If you really want to go deep and you really want to make sure that you're completely prepared, I'd tell you to go and if you haven't, by the way, Clean Code and Clean Coder, it's just sort of a side thing. It's not a technical interview, but it'll prepare you to be a better developer and interview well, the Clean Coder specifically. But in terms of technical interviews, you can You can start practicing actual practice with other people on Pramp, and then you can also go and do the book, the Cracking the Coding Interview. Can you give an example of a fintech job? Any sort of job in the financial industry where you're working with software? A bank job? A investment job? If you could pick a language to learn just for fun, what would it be? So I don't really just learn for fun. I do, it's fun, but I always have a goal at the end of it. I would say C# and .NET is something I've been wanting to dive deeper into. I've worked a little in it, but nothing to make me proficient. How does it feel jumping from 15K to 150K? Pretty rad, life-changing stuff. Yeah, it's a bit of a trip, man. I mean, I'm out here looking right now to buy an investment property or a second home, and I mean, before I could barely afford to rent a room, right? My mom was bringing me groceries, and I was going hungry and sleeping on floors, and now we're in sort of a nice hotel. Life has definitely changed. We have no debt except our mortgage. Paid off everything, debt-free we've been debt-free for 2 years. So, do you think a CS degree is a waste of time? I'm thinking it will open more doors down the line, which is true, and offer a more comprehensive education than self-taught. Also true. I'm just worried about debt and time invested. Also true. So everything you said in that statement is true. Will CS degree open doors? Yes, it will. Will it pry open doors? No. It will help certain doors to be open. Will it be more comprehensive? Yeah, it's going to go because you're spending 4 years minimum to get that CS degree. So you're going to cover quite a bit. And there is going to be a lot of money at stake, and there's going to be a lot of time at stake. Now, my argument for people who are sort of on the fence is that if you're on the fence of going to college, don't go to college. You need to be all in with college. And you're saying, well, I need to open those doors. If I gave you $50,000 in 4 years of time, are you telling me that you can't figure it out? You can't figure out how to teach yourself to code, how to get your foot in the industry? If that's the case, then college isn't going to do anything for you anyhow. So, because that's that time and energy. So you have to really be committed with it. What I meant to say, I will talk about this. What I meant to say, how did you get your first job? How many interviews did it take to get a job? How was the salary negotiation? For me particularly, I applied hundreds of apps across the country for about a 4 to 6 week period. I accepted one about 3,000 miles away on the East Coast. I'm from Los Angeles area, and negotiation went. They offered me, at the time I was making 45,000. They offered me 62 with a bump to 67 after 3 months. I accepted it instantly. I didn't negotiate at all, and I moved. That was it. There was no negotiations. I was like, I was like, all right, so 67 in 3 months from 45. That's a 22K raise, which is almost 50% raise from the amount of money I was making. Also, with state tax, I was going to pay, so I was like, instantly. Is Codified to practice algorithms right? Yeah, I think they changed the name of it to Code Signal, though. Could you stay in Tampa for the rest of your life? I mean, physically, yeah. Not really what I would do. You should So my advice to people, you should do it all. I know that's kind of a hard thing to say. When it comes to should you do like stuff at your college versus an internship, you should try and do it all. But if you can't, put preference on the internship. What kind of things do you think are time wasters when learning new frameworks? I think people tend to be their own time waster, where they watch a framework video they build the project that's being taught to them piece by piece, which is important and part of the journey, but then they don't ever go and build anything on their own, and thus none of it clicks. Do you think a 2-year, are you talking about associate's degree? Associate's degrees aren't really worth anything. How competent of a developer did you see yourself as when you got your first serious developer job, and when you expect more from someone at that level if they worked with you? Well, I got hired as a junior developer, so I knew I didn't know enough, and I would expect if a company was going to hire junior developers, which is hard, man. I've tried to convince I've had previous companies where we've interviewed hundreds of people, and I've told them like, let's just hire someone. Like, let's just hire a junior developer, pay them $20 an hour, treat it as an internship with the goal of grooming them to be better. And we'll just pick the right person, forget if they have the skills or not. And a lot of companies don't want to do that. They don't like that. They're like, no, we pay you too much money. We need you to do this. We don't have time for you to sit here and baby somebody. And that's, I'm not saying that to be like derogatory or anything like that, but that's part of it, right? You're treating someone as a junior to you, someone who is not yet fully matured in a very parental sense, I guess, or physical sense. But I've always been very pro hiring junior developers, and I think mainly because I wouldn't mind mentoring them. I think that's a fine thing to do, and I think that's one of our responsibilities as sort of developers. How do you feel about ageism in the industry? This is something people ask about quite a bit. Um, what I can tell you is that I have an experience, but I'm still fairly young. I'm 31 years old, um, and um, the majority of the developers I've worked with, excluding my last job, have all been older than me. Um, so I think where this comes from is like people look at like San Francisco where you have companies like Facebook where the average developer is like 28. Um, am I ill? No, I'm fine. I'm just trying to be quiet because April's sleeping. Um, but yeah, I would say if you take those sort of crazy things out of the equation, I don't think it's something to worry about. Can I please give an example of a full stack project that would get a junior hired? So, no one project will ever get you hired, but as I mentioned, um, just build a full stack project that you're interested in. Build an API, utilize it on the front end, and build a website for it with functionality. Thinking about doing a coding boot camp in 18 months. Is that wise? If you know so far ahead, or you have 18 months of time to kill, why not just teach yourself in these next 18 months? Yeah, San Francisco is kind of nuts. Um, you know what's crazy is, so like right now, if I was to compare $100,000 in Tampa to $100,000 in compare a $100,000 salary in Tampa, the equivalent for the San Francisco market would be something like 1.2 million in cost of living, because the housing's so crazy there and taxes and everything. Um, but not only that, they're thinking that it's going to skyrocket because all these IPOs. So you have things like Airbnb, Lyft, Pinterest, a bunch of different companies that are going to be all those people who got little pieces of stock they're going to be balling out of control pretty soon when these IPOs hit, and then the area is going to go up even quicker. Yeah, I don't understand anyone who works in SF doesn't really fully understand cost of living, and doesn't really either. They're two things. They could understand cost of living, and they're maintaining their costs very low with the extent of, with a slightly higher salary, taking money and just like they're sleeping in their car and they're gonna dip out of there. Most aren't doing that. Most are just thinking, oh, I'll make 150 grand in SF, when it's closer to like making like 60 grand anywhere else. The average, I just saw the thing the other day, the average one bedroom apartment in SF is $3,000 plus a month. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. Why would I consider an associate's a waste of time? It's not just about the money; it's more about the time. So, like your associate's going to take between 1.5 to 2 years. So, probably closer to 2 years, maybe a little bit more. And it's going to have you do a bunch of crap you don't need to do. And on top of that, companies don't value associates. They value bachelors or higher. So if you're going to go to college, go and get a bachelor's. If you're just going to learn something and you want to get a job, go to a boot camp or self-teach. Save your money, save your time, and get started quicker. That's just the truth of the matter. Associates don't mean anything. Also, it sort of goes back to this whole thing about if you're not in it to win it and not fully dedicated, like the minimum I think you should go to school for is a bachelor's. And I think almost anybody would tell you that. But yeah, so part of the whole ageism thing, I don't think is that they're trying to hire young people. Young people are the ones that they're not so worried about their future. Like right now, if you were 60 or 40 or 50 and you were going to SF and you didn't have your shit together, meaning you didn't have like your house paid off, you didn't have retirement set up, like you weren't financially set, what are you doing? Like you need to plan for this much sooner than a 25-year-old. Like 25-year-old can mess around with their money next 15 years and then get started at 40 and still be okay as long as they still can make a decent living. So part of this whole ageism thing is that you have an area that's ridiculously high cost of living, that the average software engineer, even making $150K a year in that area, still can't buy a house, can't save any real set of money. And so the only people that will do that are young people who want to network, young people who just want the environment, and because you can't raise a family. If it's $3,000 for a one-bedroom, one-bath apartment, let's just say it's you, your wife, and 2 kids, and maybe you have a dog and a cat. How much do you think that's going to... You give your kid a room, each kid gets a room, you and your wife have a room, that's a 3-bedroom place. I don't know what 3-bedroom goes for. Let's just say $5,000. That seems probably fairly reasonable if a 1-bedroom, 1-bath is $3,000. So a 3-bedroom, 1-bath, maybe 2-bath, $5,000. That's $60,000 a year. So you're paying $150. You're getting $150, and you're saying, okay, well, I'm taking $60,000, but all right, how much do you actually get after taxes? Like $110, $120, something like that. So half your money is immediately gone, and then you have a higher cost of living. It's just not worth it. Don't forget the white picket fence, right? Would I ever consider remote? Yeah, I would. Could probably save 30K a year on the basis if things go well and you don't buy anything. Yeah, but you can go and save 30K a year anywhere, making like I don't know. It's just crazy. Is it a good idea to work in another country? It's probably a fun idea. I don't know that it's a bad idea. The U.S. tends to pay higher. The cost of living's higher. Um, I don't know. If I wanted to go live in another country, I'd probably find a remote job and just move around for a bit. So, like, Waldo Mack makes a great point. I think a lot of obsession with SF is more companies that are based in the area. I've seen people with no jobs but say Facebook is good enough for them. There was a subscriber of mine who would just come in here, and I blocked him a while back, and he would just bash on how, like, you're not a real developer unless you work at one of the big four companies. And it's like, dude, not everyone wants to go live in New York or or San Francisco and work at a Google, Facebook, Microsoft, or Amazon. And like, there's plenty of good companies out there that you can make a good living. And a lot of times, that's all people want. They just make a good living. It's like, yeah, it'd be great to go work at those companies, but there's also the reality of the world. The reality of the world is you're competing against everybody, and not to say that you can't beat everybody out, but maybe you don't want to. I've had what was it? What's that stupid shoe company? Um, Zappos. So Zappos is a great example. Zappos came back to me, and they said, we really liked you, and we know you said this is your salary requirements, and the tech people said you killed the technical interview, but we just can't pay you that much because other people are coming in 20 grand cheaper. So, like, you have to, that's a real thing where sometimes they'll take a lesser candidate to save money. So you have to consider those sorts of things. And when you're saying, okay, well, you have all this young talent saying, I'll kill to be at only these four companies in SF. So not only do you have an influx of people increasing cost of living, but you also have increased competition, which means that they have more negotiating power. So you have panda eyes. Racist. You need some sleep? Dude, I'm telling you. Over SF. Go to Austin. I'm just kidding. SF and New York are the go-to examples. Yeah. Guys, I go to bed at 8 and wake up at like 6 every night. I get 9 hours of sleep every day. I don't have any caffeine. So, I'm doing pretty good. My advice to set yourself apart is testing, agile, um, learning sort of the newest stuff that's associated with the front end, progressive web apps. Those would be some good places to start. Where do I see myself professionally in 5 years? I would imagine as some sort of team lead or tech lead, mentoring other developers. That would be where I would see myself professionally. Would I recommend learning Python or Golang after having a good understanding of JavaScript? It sort of depends on what you're wanting to do. What direction you want to go. What's a good way to get into testing? Just go watch like an introduction video on Jasmine, Jest, or Mocha or Chai. Jasmine's probably the easiest and the most intuitive, and sort of get started. What I think of Tech Lead, so I haven't watched too many of Tech Lead's videos, but um, the ones I did, he seemed to really have a solid understanding of what he's talking about. How's your health been as a developer? I've never been fatter. This is day in my life. I saw a job on LinkedIn in San Diego 37 minutes ago, 855 applicants. Remind me when you said there was no shortage of devs, just good devs. Yes, that's an excellent example. And I tell people all the time is like, even if you are in the top 1% of developers, when you have 877 people applying to a single job in 37 minutes, how do you ever expect to get a job? So, maybe go somewhere where there's a little less competition, much less when you're just starting out. Am I still working on my degree? No. Golang or Python after JavaScript for back-end development? Probably C#, .NET. Python if you want to do data science. Got an email from Twitter for their internship saying they get $65,000 applications. This is what I'm talking about. This is like children. So this is childish shit right here. So like children go and apply to the same 5 companies and they get upset that they can't work at Microsoft and Google. You know what's an easier route to going and working at Microsoft or Google? Go and get a job elsewhere, get some experience, and get your foot in the door. Once you have your foot in the door, those companies are much more likely to give you the time of day. I think if Microsoft or Google would ever entertain me when I had no resume experience, no. The only time they ever called me, I had resume experience. Now I've interviewed with pretty much every large company that you guys are talking about. Do I still stand by the comment of 3 to 4 hours a day to learn to code? I think that's a healthy amount of time, but I understand that a lot of people can't. But that's what I did, and it worked for me, so how would I tell you anything else? Are there some days where I did 2 hours? Yeah. But on the weekends, I did like 14-hour days. So, it sort of all worked out. Any suggestions for websites for beginner devs struggling to learn and understand? Draw it out. Whatever you're trying to implement, just draw it out and then try to break it down into steps. Like all right, step 1, it looks like this. Step 2, it looks like this. All right, is there something I'm missing between here? How do I get here to here? Just start drawing it out. Would I follow a similar learning path if I had to relearn everything? The only thing I would change is I'd probably go to a boot camp, and I'd probably be okay buying some Udemy courses. That would be it. For those 14 hours days with all free Codecamp Udemy courses, at that time it was a lot of free Codecamp, it was a lot of YouTube. That's basically it. Codecademy also. Coding without caffeine, why do you hate yourself? It's a little rough, I'll be honest. Up until the last few days, I haven't been feeling 100%. First week is the hardest. You're drained, you're tired, you're angry, you're going through withdrawals. Second week is like you still have that drain, but you're not angry and you're not going through withdrawals, but you're drained. You're physically drained. You're like, why am I still tired? Third week, it starts going away. And fourth week, I finally feel like, all right, I'm back to normal. So it's been a minute. All right, guys. I appreciate y'all. Thank you so much for watching. I'm gonna end it a little about 10 minutes early because I want to go in the jacuzzi. Um, and just sort of relax for a little bit. As always, if you're interested in any of my courses, links in the description below. I just released the asynchronous JavaScript course, which you can get 2 free months of Skillshare. Try it out with the link down below. You can also check out the books I've recommended throughout this stream that I think are great resources for any developer, regardless of where they're in their career. As always, guys, I appreciate it. I have a video coming out on Tuesday talking about why it's okay to be a quitter. So that will be an unpopular opinion video, but someone criticized me for quitting things, and I think it's an excellent skill to have and understand how to utilize it. So look forward to that video, and I think it's going to be a good one because I think it will shine some light on how I think about things and how I drop one thing and pick something else up, and that's a crucial skill to not wasting your time. So with that being said, guys, see you next time. Like, subscribe, share,